My father was a mean drunk. Not the cheerful, stumbling kind you see in movies. The kind that gets quiet and cold. The kind whose silence is more terrifying than any shouting. I was 7 the first time I saw him backhand my mother across the kitchen for burning the roast. I was 12 when I started sleeping with a chair wedged under my doorknob. I was 17 when I left home and swore I'd never speak to him again, and I didn't. Not at his funeral, 20 years later. Not ever. I'm 70 years old now, and I've spent most of my adult life trying to be the opposite of that man. I didn't drink, not a drop, after I turned 21, and realized how easily I could slip into the same pattern. I never raised a hand to my wife Linda, never even raised my voice much. I showed up for my son Marcus. Every game, every recital, every parent-teacher conference. I was there, present, involved. I thought that was enough. I thought if I just avoided my father's most obvious sins, I'd break the cycle. But sitting here in this assisted living facility, looking at the get-well card my grandson sent, the only member of my family who still acknowledges I exist, I'm forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Marcus turned out exactly like my father. And it's my fault. Not because I repeated my father's mistakes, but because in my desperate attempt to avoid them, I made entirely new ones that led to the same destination. Different roads, same hell. And the worst part? I saw it happening. Year by year, choice by choice. And I told myself I was doing the right thing. The human capacity for self-deception is infinite. When you're trying to prove you're nothing like the person you hate most. Marcus was born in 1975, a hot August evening when the hospital air conditioning was broken and Linda labored for 18 hours in sweltering heat. When they finally placed him in my arms, this tiny, red-faced creature who weighed less than a sack of flour, I made him a silent promise. You'll never be afraid of me. You'll never wonder if I love you. You'll never feel what I felt. And I kept that promise. God help me. I kept it so well that I destroyed him. The signs started early, but I refused to see them as signs. I saw them as character, as spirit, as the natural confidence of a child who knew he was loved. Marcus was 3 when he bit another child at daycare for taking his truck. The teacher called us in, concerned. Linda wanted to discipline him, to make him understand it wasn't acceptable. He's 3, I said. He's still learning to share. We don't need to make a big deal out of it. Walter, he drew blood. The other kid probably deserved it. You know how kids can be. I can still see the look on Linda's face. That moment of doubt, of wondering if she was overreacting. I'd become expert at planting that doubt. My father had ruled through fear and violence. I learned to rule through undermining, through making everyone question their own judgment. It's a quieter tyranny, but tyranny nonetheless. Marcus was 5 when he pushed a girl off the playground equipment because she wouldn't get off the swing when he wanted. 6 when he was sent home from a birthday party for breaking another child's toy in a tantrum. 7 when his teacher reported that he was bullying smaller kids, taking their lunch money, making them cry. Each time I defended him, not because I truly believed he was innocent, though I told myself I did, but because admitting he had a problem would mean admitting I was failing, and I couldn't fail. I'd promised myself I'd be a better father than mine, and better fathers didn't raise problem children. He's just confident, I'd tell Linda. He's a leader. Boys will be boys. You're being too sensitive. That phrase, you're being too sensitive, my father used to say it to my mother, usually after he'd reduced her to tears. And here I was, decades later, using it on my own wife. Different context, same dismissal. Same way of making someone doubt their own reality. Linda tried, in the beginning. She'd come to me with concerns, with suggestions that maybe Marcus needed clearer boundaries, more consistent consequences, and I'd shoot her down every time, always with logic that sounded reasonable in the moment. You're being too hard on him. That's just normal kid behavior. Your expectations are unrealistic. You're trying to break his spirit. That last one was my favorite weapon. My father had broken my spirit, you see. So any attempt to discipline Marcus was tantamount to abuse. I'd twisted the narrative so thoroughly that standing up to a misbehaving child became the moral equivalent of my father's cruelty. By the time Marcus was 10, Linda had mostly stopped trying. She'd learned that every conversation about his behavior would end in an argument, with me defending him and her feeling like the unreasonable one. It was easier to just let it go, to pick up the pieces, to apologize to other parents and teachers while I stood behind my son like a shield. I told myself I was protecting him. I told myself I was being supportive. I told myself I was being the father I'd never had. What I was actually doing was teaching him that actions don't have consequences, that charm and manipulation can get you out of anything, that women's concerns can be dismissed if you're confident enough in your dismissal, that you're special, above the rules that apply to everyone else. I was teaching him to be a tyrant, just a different kind than my father was. Marcus was 12 when he got caught shoplifting. The store called me, not the police, small-town courtesy. I picked him up, and on the drive home, I asked him why he did it. I wanted to see if I could get away with it, he said. No shame in his voice at all. I should have been alarmed. I should have recognized that answer for what it was. A child testing boundaries that had never been properly set. Instead, I laughed. Actually laughed. Well, you almost did. Just be more careful next time, okay? Linda was horrified when I told her, "You're basically giving him permission to steal." "I'm teaching him to be smart about taking risks. There's a difference." "Walter, what's wrong with you?" I didn't answer that, couldn't answer it. Because what was wrong with me was that I built my entire identity around being the opposite of my father. And I was so invested in that identity that I couldn't see I was failing my son in equally damaging ways. High school was when things really started to unravel, though I still couldn't see it. Marcus was popular, captain of the basketball team, dated the prettiest girls, always at the center of things. He had that easy charisma that made people want to be around him, want to please him. I was proud. Look at my son, I'd think. Confident, successful. Nothing like the scared kid I was. But there were incidents. A girlfriend who showed up to school with bruises and wouldn't say how she got them. Another girl who transferred schools suddenly after dating Marcus for a month. Teammates who quit the team, citing the toxic environment. Teachers who'd pull me aside at conferences, trying to delicately suggest that Marcus might have issues with anger management or problems respecting boundaries. I defended him every time. The girlfriend was clumsy. The other girl's family moved for work. The teammates were weak, couldn't handle his leadership style. The teachers were out to get him because he was too successful, too confident, threatened their authority. I had an explanation for everything, and when Linda would try to talk to me about it, I'd accuse her of not supporting our son, of believing gossip and rumors over her own flesh and blood. "He's your son too," she said once, during a particularly heated argument. "Don't you want what's best?" "Of course I do. That's why I'm defending him instead of tearing him down like everyone else." Defending him from what, Walter? From consequences? From reality? You're not helping him. You're destroying him. "You sound just like my father," I shot back. It was a low blow, and I knew it. Linda had met my father exactly once, at our wedding, and spent the entire reception watching him drink and intimidate people. She'd told me that night she understood why I'd left. Using that against her, weaponizing my trauma to shut down valid criticism. It's one of the things I'm most ashamed of now. But in the moment, it worked. She went quiet, and we didn't discuss Marcus's behavior again for a long time. Marcus was 17 when he got a girl pregnant. Emily, a sweet kid from his class, quiet and smart. She came to our house in tears to tell us, and I watched my son, my almost adult son, sit there with his arms crossed, completely unmoved by her distress. "It's not definitely mine," he said. Emily's face crumpled. "Marcus, you know you're the only one I've ever." "That's what you say. But how do I know?" Linda took Emily to the kitchen, made her tea, held her while she cried. I stayed in the living room with Marcus. "Is it yours?" I asked. "Probably." "And you're just going to sit there and call her a liar?" He shrugged. "She should have been more careful. I should have been appalled. I should have recognized the callousness, the casual cruelty. Instead, I felt a surge of protectiveness. This girl was going to trap my son, ruin his future, burden him with responsibility before he was ready. "We'll get you a lawyer," I told him. "You're not getting stuck with this." From the kitchen, I heard Linda's voice rise. "Walter, are you serious?" I was serious. I got Marcus a lawyer. We demanded a paternity test. It was his, of course. We negotiated an arrangement where he'd pay minimal child support but have no custody, no responsibility. Emily's family wanted him to do the right thing, to step up, to be involved. I made sure that didn't happen. Protected my son from the consequences of his own actions, just like I'd been doing his whole life. Linda barely spoke to me for months after that. When she did, it was cold. Transactional. The warmth had gone out of our marriage, frozen by her disappointment in me. But I told myself she'd understand eventually, that she was being emotional and irrational, that I was doing what any good father would do. The divorce came when Marcus was 19. Linda filed papers and moved in with her sister. In the paperwork, she cited irreconcilable differences, but when we met to divide our assets, she told me, "I can't watch you destroy him anymore. And I can't let you gaslight me into thinking I'm crazy for seeing it." I never. Yes, you did. For years. Every time I tried to parent our son, you told me I was wrong, too harsh, too sensitive. You made me doubt myself so much that I stopped trusting my own instincts. And now look at him, Walter. Really look at him. Is that the man you wanted to raise? I looked at Marcus, who was living at home while attending community college. He cycled through jobs, always getting fired for his attitude. He went through girlfriends like tissues, always their fault when it ended. He'd yell at Linda when she asked him to help with chores, and I'd tell her to stop nagging him. He'd borrowed money from both of us repeatedly, never paying it back. "He's going through a phase," I said. "He's young." "He's 19, Walter. And he treats people, especially women, like they're disposable, like they exist to serve him. Does that remind you of anyone?" The implication hung in the air between us, but I couldn't accept it, wouldn't accept it. "He's nothing like my father." "No," Linda said sadly. "He's worse. Your father was a product of his time, his upbringing. He didn't know any better. Marcus does. He's had every advantage, every opportunity, and he's still turned out rotten. Because you taught him he could." After she left, Marcus came downstairs. "Good riddance," he said. She was always on my case about something. I wanted to defend Linda. The words were right there. But instead I said, "Yeah, well, she never understood us." Us. As if Marcus and I were a team, united against the unreasonable demands of the world. As if we were the victims in this story. The years after the divorce are blurry in my memory, which is probably a mercy. Marcus stayed with me, on and off, until he was 25. Each stay ended when he'd done something that even I couldn't excuse. Stealing from me, bringing drugs into the house, getting into a fight with neighbors that resulted in police involvement. But he'd always come back, and I'd always take him in. Because that's what good fathers did, right? They didn't give up on their children. They didn't abandon them, not like my father had essentially abandoned me through neglect and abuse. I couldn't see that there's a difference between abandonment and accountability. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face the consequences of their choices. Marcus got married at 28 to a woman named Jennifer. She seemed nice at the wedding, if a little quiet, a little nervous. The kind of nervous I recognized from my mother. The constant scanning for threats, the careful word choice, the forced brightness. I should have said something. Should have pulled her aside and warned her. But I didn't. Because that would mean admitting what my son was, what I'd created. So I gave a toast about how proud I was, how I knew he'd be a wonderful husband. And I watched Jennifer's smile not quite reach her eyes. They had 2 kids, my grandchildren, Emma and Jack. I met them a handful of times in their early years, always at tense family gatherings where Jennifer seemed exhausted and Marcus seemed irritated by the children's mere existence. When Emma was 5, Jennifer left him, took the kids and disappeared, filed a restraining order. The details that came out in the custody hearing made me physically ill. Years of emotional abuse, financial control, intimidation. Incidents where Marcus had punched walls next to Jennifer's head, thrown things, screamed in the children's faces until they wet themselves in fear. The court granted Jennifer full custody. Marcus was allowed supervised visitation only, which he attended twice before deciding it was too much hassle. She poisoned them against me anyway, he told me when I asked why he didn't fight harder to see his kids. She turned them into little victims, just like her. I heard my father's voice in those words, the way he'd talk about my mother, about me, about anyone who dared to be affected by his behavior. How we were weak, oversensitive, making problems where none existed. And finally, I couldn't deny it anymore. I was 70 years old, and my son had become my father. Not in the exact same ways, but in all the ways that mattered. The lack of empathy, the inability to accept responsibility, the tendency to blame everyone else for the destruction he caused, the way he treated women as objects to be controlled or discarded, the casual cruelty toward those smaller and weaker than himself. I'd spent my entire life trying to avoid raising a man like my father, and I'd succeeded in the most superficial ways, while failing in every meaningful one. The realization broke something in me. I started therapy, yes, at 70, and spent months unpacking it all with a patient woman named Dr. Morrison. She helped me see the patterns I'd been blind to. I thought I was protecting him. From what? From feeling what I felt as a kid, that fear, that shame, that sense of never being good enough. And how does Marcus feel now, do you think? I didn't have an answer, because I'd never really asked. I'd never really considered Marcus's inner life, his actual well-being. I'd been so busy proving I wasn't my father that I'd never stopped to figure out what Marcus actually needed from me. What he'd needed were boundaries, consistency, consequences that were fair but firm, the security of knowing that his actions mattered, that he wasn't the center of the universe, that other people's feelings were as important as his own. What he'd needed was to learn empathy, humility, respect, to understand that love doesn't mean getting everything you want, that being told no isn't abuse, that being held accountable isn't the same as being broken. Instead, I'd taught him that he was special, that rules were for other people, that anyone who challenged him was wrong, or weak, or against him. I'd modeled how to dismiss women's concerns, how to twist situations to avoid responsibility, how to value your own comfort over other people's safety. Different methods than my father used, but somehow, impossibly, the same result. Dr. Morrison helped me see another truth I'd been avoiding. I'd been abusive to Linda. Not physically, but emotionally. The gaslighting, the dismissing of her concerns, the way I'd made her doubt her own perceptions. That was abuse. I'd convinced myself it wasn't because I wasn't hitting her, wasn't screaming at her. But abuse doesn't have to be loud to be devastating. I wrote Linda a letter, a long one, acknowledging everything. The ways I'd undermined her parenting, dismissed her feelings, manipulated her into doubting herself. How I'd prioritize my need to be the good father over Marcus's need for actual good parenting. How I'd failed both of them so spectacularly. I didn't expect a response, and I didn't get one. But 3 months later, a card arrived. Just a simple note card with a short message. Thank you for this. It helps to know I wasn't crazy. I hope you find peace. Linda. That card is pinned to the bulletin board in my room here at Meadowbrook Assisted Living. I look at it every day. A reminder of the damage we can do when we're so focused on not being one kind of monster that we become another. He responded once. A brief text. I don't need therapy. I'm fine. You're the one with problems. That was 2 years ago. I haven't heard from him since. But I have heard from Emma, my granddaughter, who's 16 now. She found me through social media and started sending messages, asking about family history, about her dad growing up. I've been honest with her, in ways I never was with myself, while Marcus was young. I've told her about my father, about my mistakes, about how I failed her dad and how he's failed her. She sent me that get well card after my stroke last month. It has a cat on it, wearing glasses, with the caption, "Hope you're feline better soon." Inside she wrote, "Grandpa Walter, I'm glad you're okay. Thank you for being honest with me about everything. It helps me understand Dad better and why he is the way he is. It doesn't excuse it, but it helps. I hope I can visit sometime. Love, Emma." She's the only family member who wants anything to do with me. My son won't speak to me. Linda has moved on with her life, remarried someone who by all accounts is a genuinely good man. Jack, my grandson, wants nothing to do with the family after everything he witnessed growing up. But Emma wants to visit. She says she's interested in breaking the cycle, in understanding the patterns so she doesn't repeat them. She's in therapy already, working through the trauma of growing up with Marcus as a father. She's doing at 16 what I couldn't do until I was 70. That gives me something I haven't felt in a long time: hope. The other residents here at Meadowbrook sometimes ask about my family. I'm honest with them too, now. I tell them I have a son I'm not in contact with, 2 grandchildren, and a complicated history. Some of them share similar stories. You'd be surprised how many elderly people are sitting in places like this, estranged from their children, grappling with their failures as parents. There's a man down the hall, Frank, who was physically abusive to his kids. He's been sober 15 years now, spent thousands on therapy, written countless apology letters. His children still won't speak to him. He doesn't blame them. I did damage I can't undo, he says. He told me once over dinner in the dining hall. I can be sorry, I can change, but I can't erase what happened. They don't owe me forgiveness. I think about that a lot. Marcus doesn't owe me a relationship. Emma doesn't owe me visits, though I'm grateful she wants to give them. I did damage I can't undo. The cycle I tried so hard to break, I instead continued in a different form. But maybe Emma can break it. Maybe being honest about all this, documenting these patterns, owning my failures, maybe that gives her the tools I never had. Maybe the cycle ends with her. Dr. Morrison asked me once what I would say to my younger self if I could go back. I'd tell him that being the opposite of your abusive parent isn't the same as being a good parent, I said. That avoiding one set of mistakes doesn't mean you're not making different ones. That love isn't enough if you don't also provide structure, boundaries, accountability. That protecting your child from consequences is the same as failing to prepare them for life. What else? I'd tell him to listen to Linda, to trust her instincts, to understand that partnership in parenting means actually partnering, not overruling your spouse because you're scared of your own demons. What else? I thought about that for a long time. I'd tell him that you can't heal your own childhood by giving your child the opposite experience. That's not how it works. You have to actually heal yourself first, do the work, understand the patterns. Otherwise, you're just acting out your trauma in different ways. The hardest pill to swallow is that I knew on some level what I was doing. There were moments of clarity when I could see Linda was right, when I could see Marcus was headed down a dark path. But I buried those moments under layers of justification and rationalization. I chose the comfortable lie over the hard truth, again and again for years. My father made his choices out of what he was: broken, angry, steeped in toxic masculinity and alcohol. He probably never had a moment of clarity in his life, never questioned his own behavior. I had those moments and chose to ignore them, which makes my failure in some ways worse. I had opportunities to change course, to get help, to break the actual cycle. And I squandered them because I was more invested in my identity as the good father than in actually being one. Marcus is 47 now. From what Emma tells me, he's on his third marriage, estranged from both his older children, already having problems with the stepchildren from this new relationship. The pattern continues, and I don't know if he'll ever break it. He'd have to want to first. He'd have to hit some kind of bottom that makes him take stock of his life. I hope he does. Not for me. I'm under no illusion that we'll reconcile, and I'm okay with that. But for him, and for everyone who has to deal with him, he deserves better than the life he's living, the person he's become, even if he can't see it. I write in a journal now, pages and pages about my father, about my marriage, about Marcus's childhood. Dr. Morrison suggested it as a way to process everything, but it's become something more: a record, a testimony, a warning. Emma wants to read it someday. I told her she could, but only when she's ready. Only after she's done more of her own work in therapy. Because it's heavy, this stuff. The weight of generational pain. The complicated truth that people can love each other and still destroy each other. That you can have the best intentions and still cause terrible harm. That trauma doesn't just replicate itself. It evolves, adapts, finds new ways to damage the next generation. That breaking cycles requires more than just avoiding your parents' specific mistakes. It requires honest self-examination, willingness to be wrong, ability to accept criticism, commitment to change. Last week, I had a small ceremony in the Meadowbrook Chapel. Just me and the chaplain, a kind woman named Pastor Ruth. I wanted to formally apologize to Linda, to Marcus, to Emily and Jennifer, to Emma and Jack. To say out loud in a sacred space that I failed them and I'm sorry. Pastor Ruth asked if I'd forgiven my father. I don't know, I said honestly. I understand him better now. I see how damage gets passed down. How people can do terrible things while believing they're doing right. But forgiveness, I'm not there yet. Maybe I never will be. That's okay, she said. Some things are hard to forgive, even when we understand them. Do you think Marcus will ever forgive me? I think that's up to him. And it's separate from whether you deserve forgiveness. You can deserve it and not receive it. You cannot deserve it and receive it anyway. Forgiveness isn't a transaction. I think about that conversation a lot, especially at night when sleep won't come and I'm alone with my regrets. I don't know if I deserve Marcus's forgiveness. I don't know if I deserve Emma's willingness to know me. I definitely didn't deserve Linda's kindness in sending that card. But I'm grateful for what I have, for Emma's visits, which started last month and happen every other Sunday. For the small community here at Meadowbrook, other flawed humans grappling with their own histories. For Dr. Morrison's patient guidance. For Pastor Ruth's gentle wisdom. For the clarity that comes, finally, from stopping the lies. I'm 70 years old, and I raised a son who turned into the man I swore I'd never be. That's my legacy. That's the truth I have to live with for whatever time I have left. But maybe it doesn't have to be Emma's legacy. Maybe she'll take these lessons, bought at such a terrible price, and build something different. Maybe she'll raise children who are neither tyrants nor doormats, who understand both kindness and boundaries, who can be confident without being cruel. Maybe the cycle ends with her. That's my hope anyway. my small, fragile hope in the wake of so much failure. Yesterday, Emma brought me a book. "I thought you might like this, Grandpa," she said. It was about generational trauma, about healing family patterns. She'd marked certain passages with sticky notes, paragraphs about forgiveness and accountability and change. On the inside cover, she'd written a note. "We can't change the past, but we can change how it shapes the future. Thank you for being brave enough to tell the truth. Love always, Emma." I cried when I read that. Sat in my small room with its narrow bed and single window. Held that book to my chest, and cried like I haven't cried since I was a boy, cowering in my bedroom, listening to my father rage downstairs. But these were different tears. Not tears of fear or shame, but of something else. Gratitude, maybe. Or relief. The tears that come when you finally stop running from the truth. I spent 70 years trying not to be my father, and in doing so, I raised a son who embodies all the worst parts of him. Different methods, same damage. The cycle I tried to break, I simply bent into a new shape. But Emma knows. She sees it clearly, the whole ugly pattern, and she's committed to something I never was until it was too late. Honest examination, real accountability, genuine change. So maybe that's something. Maybe that's enough. I can't fix the past. Can't undo the damage I did to my son, my wife, my grandchildren. Can't take back the years of enabling and gaslighting, choosing my own comfort over everyone's well-being. But I can tell the truth about it. I can own it fully. I can be the cautionary tale that maybe helps someone else avoid the same mistakes. I can love Emma without trying to control her narrative or protect myself from criticism. I can support her healing without making it about me. I can, finally, be honest. And maybe that's what being a good father, a good grandfather, actually means. Not avoiding the specific sins of your own father, but doing the hard, humble work of actually seeing yourself clearly, of listening to criticism, of accepting that love requires more than just good intentions, of understanding that we're all capable of becoming the monsters we most fear, just in different disguises. The sun is setting outside my window now, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Emma will be here Sunday. She's bringing her boyfriend to meet me. A young man, she says, reminds her of her late grandfather on her mother's side. Kind, patient, steady. I'll meet him. I'll listen to her talk about college plans and her therapy progress and her hopes for the future. And I'll support all of it without trying to protect her from reality, without undermining anyone else's perspective, without making it about my own needs. I'll do what I should have done 40 years ago with Marcus. Trust that setting high standards and holding people accountable is actually more loving than excusing every mistake. Better late than never, I suppose. Though in my case, it's far, far too late for the people who needed it most. But maybe not too late for Emma. Maybe not too late for the generations that come after. Maybe that has to be enough. The weight of 70 years sits heavy on my shoulders. The weight of being my father's son and Marcus's father. The weight of all the ways we damage each other while claiming love as justification. But I'm carrying it now. Not hiding from it, not deflecting it, not blaming anyone else. Just carrying it, honestly, until my time comes to set it down. And hoping, praying, that Emma picks up something lighter, something better, something true.